Hello everyone, Sketch here, and today I'll be covering the tank challenge using Dr. Thrax. As usual, I'll be playing on hard difficulty, and as with my other guides, I will talk about the general strategy that I use to defeat the tank general, as well as tips and tricks that you can use to get ahead. Now just a note before we jump right in, I will be covering a lot of points regarding different phases of this run, so what I say might be out of sync with what's happening on screen. So feel free to jump to different points of the video if you want to get a sense of what I mean. And without further ado, let's get right into the run. Now as usual, we're going to get a whole lot of workers at the beginning to get stuff done, and as workers are, well, cheap. Now the map in general is quite large and is basically a giant valley between your starting point and General Kwai's base. Most players will probably expand to at most the edge of their base and try to set up a defense line there. This strategy experiences varying degrees of success depending on the general you are playing, as it relies mostly on your base defenses to protect you. Now however, if you are quick enough, you can take advantage of the neutral buildings on his side of the valley and garrison them with RPG troopers. We're going to do this by sending out our workers to behind the neutral buildings as quickly as possible and just get our barracks behind it. And at the same time, we're going to grab supplies everywhere in between to get a strong economy going. For reference, I normally get about 6 or 7 supply depots at the beginning. At each supply depot, train at least 4 workers to maximize your resource gathering rate and build a wall of tunnel networks to fence off your side of the map. You can use the tunnel defenders that spawn out of the network to garrison the buildings. If you set up the economy, you should be earning money as quickly as you spend it on building tunnel networks. For now, the priority is to prepare for his first attack wave that hits your center line after about 2.5 minutes after you gain battle control. And I do this by getting enough RPG troops from the tunnel networks to load into the buildings. Try to build the supply depots nearer to the front line first, as you can then spawn workers right at the front to build all the tunnel networks in one go. Now the good thing about the tank challenge is although his attacks start quite early, the attacks on his flanks are far from overwhelming, at least in the beginning. He sends isolated units along the top and bottom, mostly infantry in the beginning. After that, he ramps up to maybe stray Gatlings and Battle Masters. Additionally, he will occasionally send attack groups consisting of Gatling tanks, ECMs, and Battle Masters, but one group at a time, with an exception that I will cover later. As the challenge progresses, though, he will send tougher units against you, adding in Dragon tanks and even Emperor Overlords. But hopefully by then you will have your Palace units out, like maybe Rocket Buggies or even German Kel. Now, the initial defense might feel a little chaotic to say the least, and mistakes will usually be made. Fortunately, as long as you get enough RPGs into those buildings in the center, you should be able to recover without much issue. For example, you may have missed a tunnel network in your wall. You may not have built a full wall, and some units, usually infantry, will slip right past and go right for your supply depots and your workers. Now, if you realize this, and you see it coming, it's easy to respond by peeling off a worker to build a tunnel network, or to go for a barracks and get some rebels out to defend. Usually by the time any infantry slip through the network wall, I usually have my arms dealer out, so I normally get some quads to clean them up. Again, economy shouldn't be impacted all too much if you have your supply centers up. In fact, once your arms dealer is done, you should have more than enough money to do whatever you like. As Toxin General, your Toxin networks do much better against enemy tanks than the normal tunnel networks. But one weakness is that tank hunters outrange your Toxin networks, so you will either have to reserve some units to counter them, or to add stingers to your wall. So go ahead and get the palace immediately after the arms dealer is done. By this time, you should have gained enough EXP to reach 3 stars. When you do so, go straight for the cash bounty. You don't need the rebel ambush yet, and scud launchers are pretty much useless at this time. Some people like marauders for their offensive capability so that they can take on the center. But since you've already taken the center, you won't need them. Cash bounty, on the other hand, ensures that the tank general keeps you supplied with lots and lots of money out of his infinite wallet. And I mean it, tank general really has unlimited funds. He wouldn't be able to sustain the flow of tanks otherwise. Anyway, by the time the palace is ready, I usually have about $40,000 to $50,000 on hand, so I can basically do whatever I want. The easiest method is to spam scud storms. In my experience, the supplies at the edge of your main base would have been collected by now, so leaving your workers free to start building all the scud storms. So go ahead and use those workers to build the storms. Go ahead and sell the supply depots there if the supplies are done, to not only get a little extra cash, but also make way for more storms. If that's the strategy you so choose, the rest of your game is basically defense until you launch the scud storms. Alternatively, you can also muster a good offense using tanks, which I will discuss here. Or you can use a combination of the two, although you have to take care not to storm areas which your tanks have to roll into, because of all the toxin fallout and all. If you're playing Demo General, you won't have to worry about the fallout, and that can have interesting results, but that's a subject for another guide. Another note is that this tank strategy does not apply for Stealth General, as he does not have tanks, and his quads just don't have the punch you need for this to work. So your safest bet for Stealth General is to just go for the scuds. On a side note, getting Thrax Gamma from the palace makes defense much easier, as all your base defenses gain a 50% benefit from the upgrade. Now continuing on to the defense, by the time your palace comes out, you will begin to see MiGs in the air. They usually go for your workers, so just make sure you replenish any workers assigned to repair your garrison buildings or your base defenses. Now, in addition, get more quads and just scatter them around behind your defense line. The MiGs don't really target your quads, and having quads around to shoot them down really helps with your cash bounty. You will also see helixes, and if your networks have no air defenses nearby, the helixes can easily put a hole in your wall. Again, quads posted behind different parts of your defense line should be enough to deal with his air army, or you can scatter stinger sites, and stinger sites actually do a pretty good job. Now, let's talk about the offense. First up, the scud approach. There isn't too much to demonstrate or too difficult to execute really, so I won't be doing it on video. Now firstly, about 8 storms should be enough to wipe his base out, but I recommend continuing to build extra on top of the 8, just in case your storms somehow fail to destroy something. Start off by tossing one at his command center, as that will bring it down to low health, plus the Toxin fallout should take out any dozers that want to spawn from it. Cover his entire base with Scud Storms, and hopefully the other Scuds you throw at his nearby buildings should be enough to finish the command center off, hopefully. Remember that the Scud Storm is a really powerful super weapon, and it does do some damage outside of the blast radius that you see when you select it. In addition, you can skip the base defenses and the internet center, as they do not count towards victory. Skipping the internet center can easily save you a storm, so it's a good idea to keep that in mind. Finally, it's unlikely but possible that Tank General manages to start a construction site going for one of his buildings. If they come up, you will need to take those out, as they count towards victory as well. This is more likely to happen if you play Demo General, as his storms don't have Toxin fallout to destroy any construction sites that pop up. If that happens, that's what the Spare Scud storms are for. If you want to execute this strategy quickly, the key is to tech up as quickly as possible so that you can push storms out as early as possible. It might be hard to squeeze out time to start that arms dealer while you're in the middle of building your defense up, but it might help if you focus on getting that arms dealer out after you get about maybe 4 RPGs in each building, as that should be the bare minimum for you to survive the first wave of tanks. Now if you enjoyed that, I would really appreciate it if you could give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more like this, go ahead and smash that subscribe button. It really helps me to grow this channel and signals to me that you folks want more guides like this. And with that said, let's move to the second attack option. The second option, which can be slightly quicker, but also carries more risk, is to rush Tank General with tanks. To give him a taste of his own medicine is not an easy feat though, and his Battle Masters will make short work of your Scorpions if you don't do something about them first. Fortunately, you can do something about it, but I will cover that later. Anyhow, you want to get a whole lot of Scorpions and maybe a few quads mixed in to kill any helixes spawning in his base during the attack. Firstly, get 4 to 5 arms dealers and control group them individually. Now, key to this is knowing the hotkeys. The hotkeys for Scorpions is S, the hotkey for quads is U. So to keep producing tanks, just tap the group number, spam S or U, and repeat. Your economy should be strong enough to keep all the arms dealers constantly building. Don't forget to get Scorpion rockets as well, because you'll need all the damage you can get. In addition, make sure you get a blank market and the radar van upgrade, as well as the AP rockets upgrade for your Scorpion rockets to have slightly more punch. Now, you might have thought of using rocket buggies or some such to punch a hole in its defenses and stream your tanks in from there. This is troublesome, as his MiGs tend to attack your rocket buggies, causing you problems from the get-go. So what we're gonna do instead is we're gonna wait until 5-star and then sneak attack right into his base. But before we do that, we'll have to prepare a little more for it. Go ahead and build a tunnel network near your arms dealers, because we'll be using this to flood his base. Now, General Kwai keeps a reserve force of about 3 attack groups in his base, and if you just spawn your sneak attack in, his reserves will go right for it and just deny your offense. Fortunately, you can trick his AI into leaving his base by spawning a rebel ambush once you reach 4-star. Once his reserve forces aggro onto your rebel ambush and kill the rebels, they will immediately rush out of his base towards your defense line. I personally like to spawn the rebel ambush between his command center and airfield, as it helps me to visually confirm that his tanks have aggroed onto my rebels. Make sure your defense line is ready to handle the influx before you start the attack. Fortunately, the center will take the brunt of its forces, so as long as you fill them with RPGs and have workers nearby to repair them, you should be alright. If your defense gets overrun somehow and you're worried about losing your base, go ahead and peel off some Scorpions to stabilize the area. But honestly, if you prepared enough tanks for the attack, you won't need to look at your base anymore. Spawn your sneak attack between his command center and his airfield. Now the flood begins. Control group the sneak attack. Remember, the hotkey for emptying buildings is V, so select all your tanks, order them into the tunnel network at home, select your sneak attack by control group, and just spam V. The tanks will continue to flow out of their sneak attack and wreak havoc on whatever forces are in his base. put the sneak attack's rally point somewhere ahead of it so your tanks don't crowd right on top of the sneak attack. His defense at this time should mostly consist of whatever units he's continually spawning at his base, and you should be able to mow them down quite easily. Taking his war factories out will put a stop to those tanks, making your life much easier, so maybe try to make it a priority. Also, you can add a few quads into your army to handle any mix or helixes he manages to throw at you, but in my experience, this isn't normally a huge issue. As for your attacking units, try to spread them out by moving them out further into the base. Manual target and clear the airfield and command center if you need room to space your units out. Another thing about your units is that they won't automatically attack the buildings, so you will have to order them to attack buildings by guard ordering them onto specific locations. You can do this by selecting them, tapping G, and the area you want them to go to town on. This will save you a lot of manually selecting buildings in order to shoot them down. If well executed, it won't even look like a contest anymore. Don't forget that you don't have to take out base defenses to win, so you don't have to waste any scorpions on taking out the bunkers or gatling cannons at his front lines. Another tip for speeding things along is to spread your units out as quickly as possible. Have your arms dealers continuously build more scorpions, and when you bring them into his base, have them take out the buildings closer to your sneak attack. That way, you're able to streamline your attack by evenly spreading your units throughout his base as quickly as possible. And that was my guide on using Toxin General to defeat Tank General. I hope you enjoyed this video. What do you think about the strategies? Do you have an idea for improving it? Let me know what you think in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching and I will see you in the next video. Stay safe, everyone.
We are victorious.
You may have defeated my tanks, General, but the Tigress will crush you like an insect.